Hey, beautiful soul. Welcome to Spirit Speakeasy. I'm Giovanni, joyful medium. I'm a working psychic medium, energy healer, and spiritual gifts mentor. This podcast is like a seat at the table in a secret club, but with mediums, mystics, and the spiritual luminaries of our time. So come behind the velvet ropes with me and see inside my world as I chat insider style with profoundly gifted souls. We go deep, share juicy stories, laugh a lot, and it wouldn't be a speakeasy without great insider secrets and tips. You might even learn that you have some gifts of your own. So step inside the Spirit Speakeasy. Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back or welcome in for another episode of Spirit Speakeasy. I just really love getting to do this podcast with you. In this week's episode, we are going to dive into the 9 themes that we can expect to see in 2025. This is a bit predictive, but it's using numerology to do the predictions. This podcast originally launched in December of 2022. And one of the early episodes, I did the numerological themes for the upcoming year. And every year has its own numerology. I do this with my students for their personal year every year. But for the collective, we are all in the same collective calendar year, so we can all expect certain themes to rise up. If you missed last year's episode for 2024 predictions, the 8 themes for the 8 year, I invite you to go back and check that out. It's so fascinating to see how those themes rolled out in our lives individually and collectively as well. But this year, we're going to get into the 9 themes of the 9 year because, of course, 2025 is a 9 year. So one of the purposes for looking at the themes and energy of the year is so that we can use these themes and potentials to help us move forward rather than to feel like we're fighting against the current when these themes inevitably rise, because they will rise, like it or not. This is something that's out of our control, sort of like the weather. I do like to let you know, for those of you that are like, why are there 9 themes? What do you mean it's a 9 year? Essentially, in numerology, we are condensing things down to a single number to look at prescribed themes that are associated with that number. So 9 is in the center of 2 powerful numbers in the cycle, 8 and 1, because 9 is the final number in the numerological cycle. So last year was an 8 year. The following year, 2026, will be a 1 year. 9 is an incredibly important number. 1 is the beginning of the journey. That means 9 is the pinnacle for completion of this cycle, of this 9-year cycle. There's no need to rush to get something started this year as part of this energy, and delays might actually be a part of anything new that we're trying to launch or to get up running off the ground this year. 1 is a little more preferable to launch something brand new, but it doesn't mean we can't be working on it. It's just there's a bit of a heads up about if you are trying to get something new started, there might be delays and red tape and little hiccups in ways that you didn't anticipate. And these themes will show up collectively inside our individual lives and as a whole in our communities, in our countries of residence, in our countries of origin. And I like to encourage you to use these themes to empower yourself rather than to be in fear, right? Hopefully, if you have been here at all before, you know about me now that I'm not intending ever to be an alarmist or fearmonger, but rather to get bits of heads up for us so that we can either plan accordingly to manage our energy or resources so that when these themes do show up, we're not panicked. We're a little bit more having the expectation of, oh yeah, okay, I was expecting for this. I've been preparing for this. I know what to do, or I'm not going to be rattled by this energy, more so that we can be in flow with the energy, not in fear bumping up against it. If you want to know how we get to the number of the year, essentially the year 2025 is 2025. You just add all of those together. So 2 plus 0 is 2. Add another 2 is 4, and then add 5 is 9. You could do the math out for yourself if you want to. It's pretty simple. So this year that we're entering into, 2025, is a 9 year. What we call the beginning is often the end. And to make it a beginning, the end is where we start from. That is a T.S. Eliot quote. I'm going to read that again to you. What we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a new beginning. The end is where we can start from. And that is essentially where we are this year. We are at the end of this 9-year cycle. So these 9 themes, I'm just going to invite you to consider. You can always return to this episode throughout the year to see what themes are arising for you. And I mean, you could make notes, but I will have the show notes for you as well. So I'm just going to dive right into these 9 themes. We'll pick them apart. I'll try to turn them upside down and explain them for you. But if you have questions or comments, I always love to hear those in the comment section or wherever you're watching or listening to this. And of course, you can email me directly if you have feedback or a share of your own. You know, I love those. So the first theme we can be expecting to see in 2025, and these are in no particular order. As you know, sometimes things seem a little disordered in our lives. So this first theme that we can expect to see is review or revisit. And really, it's part of so many of the cycles and experiences of our lives is about reviewing what we've experienced, what we've been through, and it's about looking at these events, occurrences from a new perspective or the perspective that we are in this point in time so that we can use our experience and our perspective to grow. This year we'll be collectively and individually reviewing the previous 8 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if you find yourself, you know, in your quiet moments, kind of revisiting or reviewing or reassessing things from your past, particularly the last 8 years, which would put us about like 2016 through 2025 or even 2015 through 2024. I'd be expecting those themes, ideas, memories to be rising. And if we are talking about collectively, what are the systems that have been put in place that have changed? Where's the push-pull in our government, in our communities, right? And reviewing what has worked and what hasn't worked. Sometimes it's easy to feel like the 9 is taking us in the wrong direction, right? Backwards. But this direction is actually where we must review in order to find the unfinished issues which are preventing us from going forward. For this reason, it can also feel like revisiting an old version of ourselves, past themes, past emotions, past situations, even people can resurface this year. I know I often have clients that are, you know, looking for a new relationship and they'll say, oh, my ex has been on my mind or my ex has been pinging me or looking at my profile. You can expect that type of energy this year. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a sign for you to re-engage, but just an opportunity for you to revisit, re-evaluate. These themes may show up in similar ways in situations or in new unexpected costumes. Often we're dealing with some of the same themes throughout our life. Sometimes they show up, you know, in old familiar ways, but sometimes the way I jokingly say it in my own life is same wolf, new clothes, right? Wolf in sheep's clothing. So watch for old themes to be showing up in new and unexpected ways. Remember, the purpose of review or revisiting is preparation. Reflect, contemplate, assess, prepare. This can include your beliefs, your fears, behaviors, actions, or inactions. It can even be collectively showing up as understanding where we as a society turn a blind eye to suffering, for example, and what changes we want to make in witnessing and helping, for example. So where are we going a direction that's maybe not in alignment with our goals and beliefs? And where are we right in alignment with it and want to keep doing what we are doing? For those of you watching on the video version, my body cannot decide what temperature it is today. So I am wearing layers. Because it's a funky weather outside as usual this time of year in Southern California, hot and cold at the same time. So don't be alarmed. I often have people ask me, clients and students, you know, I thought I healed from this pattern. I thought I overcame this conflict, for example. Why is this rising back up for me? And I want to encourage you, don't take it as a negative, take it as a positive. It means that you have healed, you have grown, you have expanded. And now this current, more knowing, more wise, more experienced version of you can take time to review and reassess these old situations, to learn more, to glean a little bit more information, to have a bit more perspective about ourselves or the society and community that we're collectively creating. So expect lots of revisiting, reviewing, reevaluating over the past 9-ish years. The second theme we need to talk about here in this 9-year is unfinished business. 9 is about completion, reaching conclusions, tying up loose ends. Every new beginning is some other beginning's end. You may have heard that song. As one door closes, another one opens. But if you refuse to accept that certain doors really have closed, you'll be unable to recognize the new possibilities. Also, be available to recognize the natural completion or ending of things. There may be things that have just kind of run their course, so to speak, and will naturally fall away. This includes interests and sometimes even people. Maybe for many years you've been really interested in, I don't know, cooking, for example, and now you're just feeling drawn to something else, or you're just feeling like certain aspects of it aren't that important to you, right? It could just be this natural falling away. That means that people might exit our lives. Just know that this has to do with coming to completion with sometimes the relationship itself, sometimes that version of the relationship. But as you're reevaluating and revisiting and being available to understand this like unfinished business or completion in your life, make sure that you're not hanging on to something that is time to let go of. This can even be a way that we move in the world, right? The way that we treat people, the way that we allow people to treat us. One of the questions to be rolling around in your mind is, am I finished with this yet? Or am I still having more to pursue, learn, engage here? I think the unfinished business one is pretty obvious, but I do think it's going to come up in our lives in so many ways. And the other thing is, especially as it relates to us collectively, there might be this undulation in the energy, right? Where something is, I keep thinking about with all the uncertainty with government and with our programs that we have collectively that are often sponsored or controlled at the federal government level in the US anyway. And it could be, for example, maybe a group wants to close down a program or defund a program, and we might see action towards that. And then we might see an uprising of others that are saying like, no, we need, I don't know, education, for example. That's not what we all agree to. So you might see this push pull as we try to come complete with the energy of how we are running things and with, unfinished business, completion. So I would also expect to see maybe a little bit of exodus from perhaps our country, perhaps communities, people deciding I'm complete with the energy of this group, or I have finished what I came to do here in this role, and now it's time for me to do something else, for example. So the third theme that is very important to be aware of in 2025 is this idea of cleaning house. So if you knew, let's just use it in the 9 cycle, if you knew that in 6 months you were going to be moving and you were able to have a heads up, wouldn't you kind of be cleaning out your cabinets a bit, or your closets, or if you had time, ideally? Well, think of it like that. This cleaning house is about letting go, releasing what no longer serves us, whether it's by an unraveling of understanding, or just by a literal throwing away. And it doesn't have to have a negative connotation. Sometimes we're unraveling the understanding of why we are engaging in this activity anyway, why we believe what we believe. Think of even just your morning routine, for example. Why do you do it that way? Is it because that's the way you've always done it? Is it because that's what works the best for you? So, cleaning house, I mean it in a really broad way. I have a literal image of a house with this one in my mind. In Boston in the wintertime, you need to maintain the pipes. And really it has to do with that when it gets too cold, they freeze and the water expands and pipes can burst. And if you don't maintain them, it's kind of common back there for anyone who lives back east or in our lovely neighbors in Canada or wherever it's cold. You will know that if you don't maintain the pipes, they can burst in the winter, forcing you to attend to them. Like, maybe that's not what you wanted to do right then, but if a pipe bursts in your house and your house is flooding, you're going to be forced to attend to it. That's part of the energy of this year. No more sweeping things into the closet or under the rug to deal with later, quote unquote. Get those skeletons in order, else they may burst out during a dinner party, is the notes that I made for myself. So it is one of those things where, we all have things that we don't want to deal with, that we don't like to look at. It's kind of the eye roll. I need to literally clean out my closets right now. I'm getting to it. It's kind of that kind of energy, but it is this feeling of you're either going to get to it willingly or some things are going to erupt and force us to get to it, right? And again, that can be individually in our own lives, and it can also be collectively in our communities, in our countries. So part of this cleaning house and really sorting out our skeletons and coming to peace with everything, old heartbreaks can arise to our awareness to allow us to heal before the next cycle. For example, again, if you were going to move and start a whole new chapter of your life, what would you take with you? What would you release? What would you give away? What would you throw out, etc.? This includes the energy and emotional baggage that you choose to take. Emotional baggage is a choice. Yeah, we all have things that we've been through. There's trauma that happens in real life as a part of our world, but how are you choosing to be in relationship with those past experiences or the relationships of our life, for example? So, any energy, any emotional baggage, are you choosing to take that with you in this new cycle, or are you coming complete and choosing to understand it in a different way? Your soul will bring to your awareness the areas to look at. So, if you're sitting here saying, like, I don't know what areas I need to be looking at, if you're available for it, your soul will let you know. They'll arise through things like your emotions, situations that come up in your life, things that you feel triggered by, for example, ways you're feeling triggered and or inspired. But there's also an aspect of being intentional about what we're choosing to bring forward. So you can even let your mind be available to think about it. Perhaps you have a meeting, right? And you're going into this meeting and there's one person on the team that is constantly not pulling their weight, let's say. Are you choosing to continue to let it go on like that? Or is there a different way you want to clean house around that? Maybe you can have a small group meeting and call them in to support them in a different way, to give them goals, to let them know it's not an attacking. It's just a how can we clean this up so that we're not carrying this forward into the new year. And it's going to show up in all the areas of our lives, relationships, as it relates to even the places that we live, our physical dwelling spaces. If you've got a messy car, now's the time to clean that out. If you've got closets like me that have been just really getting stuffed for the last years, maybe going through that. But it's in the relationships in our lives too, the way we look at things, the way we treat people. Maybe sometimes we are supporting things that aren't necessary anymore. And can we clean house around that? Can we be honest about what's no longer serving us? Can we find a new way? So, cleaning house. The fourth theme that is really important and going to show up in 2025 is this idea of surrender and transformation. I think we've all known people who are, for example, in a marriage or a relationship that's over with, basically, and yet they won't get a divorce or won't break up with their partner until they have, for example, another love interest waiting in the wings. Have you ever known anyone like that or a situation like that? Think about the next cycle this choice is creating. This energy of surrender and transformation is about honesty and open heartedly evaluating and releasing what's finished and what no longer is serving a positive function, and then moving forward without a net. That is probably the key part of this. Is we are asked to surrender, to move forward, to allow ourselves to start transforming for this new cycle. But it doesn't mean we're going to have a safety net. It doesn't mean we're going to have perfect plans laid into place that are all going to fall into order exactly what we have. You ever experienced it like that? Probably almost never, I would say, for most of us. And that's going to be true here. So doesn't mean you're going to have a net. You're just stepping in. You do some planning, right? Don't just like jump off here we have the cliff diving in San Diego or the paragliding. Don't just jump off a cliff without a parachute or a paraglide or whatever. But you're not going to have every duck in a row and everything in place by the end of 2025. So it's about really just releasing what's finished and no longer serving a positive function and moving forward and allowing yourself to create or find or to have show up what is next. And surrender really has the energy of, even though I don't know what's next, I'm rolling with this as it unfolds. But the metamorphosis will be happening either way. Um, all of our growth happens outside the comfort zone, as we know, and we are all going to be transforming, both as individuals. Our communities are going to be transforming and changing. Our countries are going to be transforming and changing in ways, like it or not. Our collective, like global family, things are changing. If you haven't noticed, lots of things are bubbling up. And I mean it with the people and the citizens. I mean it with the leadership. And I even mean it with, like, in Southern California, or I guess in Northern California, it was, we just had an earthquake off the ocean not too long ago that they were giving like tsunami warnings about. So metamorphosis is happening either way. It's just, are you going to surrender to it? Or are you going to fight against it? That's part of your choice. This is also part of setting up the fertile ground for next year as a 1 year. So next year, 2026, after 2025, right, is the like fresh chapter, right? So when you think about when you're reading a book and you go on to the next chapter, that's what the 1 year is. This 9 has to do with setting up the energy, right? Remember, I said it's not necessarily about creating something new and having it take off. It's doing all the preparation. Like if you were a gardener and you were going to plant something, you don't just go out there and start planting. You have to prepare the soil. There's a lot of steps you would have to do ahead of time. That's what the 9 is for. This can also, in this surrender and transformation, look like things like a breakup or the loss of a job or the closing of a business. It can be the opening of a business or the transition of a business, the birth of a child, a marriage, or finding a deep connection, even if it's not a traditional, like, quote unquote marriage. It could be child leaving home. It could be a health crisis. It could be graduating or even going back to school. It can be getting a job or a promotion leading to like a geographical move, for example. There will be things that feel uncomfortable and we get to choose. Are we going to surrender and go with what is presenting, go with this transformation, even though we don't know, are we turning into a butterfly? Is that what's happening? We can't be guaranteed. Or are we going to keep hanging on to what's old, even if it's not working, just because it's familiar? And it is, like I said a little bit earlier, it is going to be by choice or by the image I have in my mind is like, for those of you that are ladies or a person who likes to carry a purse or a backpack and you just, things collect in there, I just keep imagining it as like the whole thing being turned over and dumped out. Either you're going to organize it and it's going to be tidy and cleaned up and you can move forward, or it's going to get dumped out for you to organize. So just a little heads up there. The shift could initially be a trigger through like the life of a spouse, for example. Like you might not be the initial trigger of this surrender and transformation. In parts, it could be like maybe your partner or your spouse gets this promotion and this job that has to move. Maybe it has to do with a child or a parent. Perhaps they get fired or get a promotion or something of that nature. Perhaps you're having to make choices about taking care of a parent, or you're moving back in with a parent. So it can show up in lots of ways. And while in that case, with your partner getting a job, for example, it's not happening directly to you. Indirectly, it's still shaping your entire world and transforming your day-to-day life as part of this. So this can also include things like quote unquote shadow work. That means looking at the hard parts of ourselves, right? And being willing to release what's not working, to let ourselves have this transformation, this metamorphosis. Now, the fifth theme, buckle up. I know some of you are going to have some feelings about this one. The fifth theme for 2025 that we can expect to show up is forgiveness. A subheading for this theme could be accepting and honoring imperfection in ourselves and others. So why do you need to forgive, and who do you need to forgive? Yourself, someone else, God, or a higher power? Are you carrying any resentments? Are you carrying any anger? It's time to integrate your past with your present, recognizing and releasing emotions and aspects that keep you anchored to a point in time that no longer exists, so you can feel the full potential of your future as it unfolds. I don't talk about it much here just because I'm not a victim in life, but I've had a lot of trauma and a lot of crazy happenings and hard times over the course of my life, as I'm sure you have too. Are there times where you've just been like pissed at your higher power or an old version of yourself? Why did you make that choice back then? That set our life up like this. And now I'm still unraveling a choice I made when I was a kid. Are there people in your previous part of your life, right? Maybe someone that you're no longer engaged in a relationship with of any kind, that still you're carrying resentment and anger and frustration, that you're still, like I said, really just hanging on to, or you're emotionally, you talk about cords and cord cutting. This is part of that. When your energy is anchored into a point in the timeline on the past that doesn't exist anymore. The only thing that exists is present moment. So are you still keeping yourself energetically bound to a space and time that doesn't currently technically exist anymore? Maybe you still have feelings about it, but we want to really be able to let you have the full potential of your future as it unfolds. So forgiveness isn't about accepting behavior that someone else did, for example. It's just about releasing yourself from that situation, those emotions. And your reality is not just a matter of where you stand today or where you want to be tomorrow. It's made up of everything that has ever happened to you, everyone you've ever met, anything you've ever done, any feeling you've ever felt or feeling you've ever denied. This can be uncomfortable, but better to remove the splinter this year instead of letting it fester into the next cycle. Do you know what I mean? If someone is resisting or if someone is resisting or in a challenged side of the spectrum of this theme, it can present as being really angry, irritable. It can be these frustrated outbursts, just general annoyed behavior or attitude. They can be in a victim mentality. They can be in deep sadness that they're not willing to move through. It can show up as someone who has like a really hardened heart, like the Grinch with the heart that's too many sizes too small. And we can grow through that, move through that. If you need the support of a therapist or a counselor or a coach, please do that. There are often also supportive groups online that you could be part of. There's lots of ways to learn and grow and forgive. This is not something I'm sponsored by at all, just something I want to share. In her book, Forgiveness, 21 Days to Forgive Anyone for Everything, Iyanla Van Zant, who I love and have followed for many years, writes, it's not about excusing behavior. Forgiveness doesn't mean you condone what was done to you, nor does it mean you have to invite the person back into your life. Forgiveness is a process of giving up the old for something new. It means accepting the events of the past while being willing to change your perspective on them. I'm going to put a link to the book. It's not very expensive. You can get it right on Amazon. I'm not sponsored in any way by this. I just think if you are having a tough time with forgiveness, it's a great place to start. And it might change your mind about what forgiveness even means. I think I definitely a long time ago had a different perception and had such a hard time with it because I thought it meant like excusing things that happened, and it doesn't. So, but we don't want to fester within ourselves, right? Okay, I'm going to leave that because I know that word can be really triggering for some people, but it is going to be showing up as a theme. And if we don't forgive and find a way to move past, we are the ones anchoring our energy into past trauma or past difficult situations, and we keep ourselves kind of quote unquote stuck there. You've probably heard me say this before. Feeling stuck or feeling like we're stuck or like we just can't move forward is most often an unprocessed emotion. So the sixth theme that you can expect to be showing up in your world and in our worlds collectively in 2025 is humanitarianism. Once we more deeply understand and accept ourselves, we have equal deepening compassion, understanding, empathy for others, or we have the ability to at least. Where can you express more compassion or grace for others? Are you sharing time, energy, resources? It's not enough to have grown. We must demonstrate our growth. And particularly, I'm going to be very cautious here. My intention is never to offend anyone, but to be quite honest, it's often also hard for me to be biting my tongue. But I don't want anyone to feel excluded. But I will say, with what is changing in governments, certainly in the US and in different countries in the world, there could be a perceived level of oppression. And there has been oppression historically throughout time in many instances and many points on the timeline and in many communities and collectives. So what are you going to do about that oppression, right? What are you going to do about the systems that are being imposed? Well, part of the answer is humanitarianism. So as the other side of this coin, as just a little aside, I would expect to be witnessing, experiencing, knowing more oppression or more people who have the intention to oppress, to separate, to have power over. And that was one of the themes of this 8-year. So what is the option? Humanitarianism. Again, it's not enough to just have grown. We must demonstrate our growth. And mastering the golden rule in our hearts can be part of this. How can you become more humanitarian in simple ways? Think of like grassroots, right? Many of us in our lifetimes, myself included, have been privileged to not have to it's not like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, at least in my lifetime, but now perhaps it will be. And perhaps we are all going to be called to give of ourselves in these humanitarian grassroots ways. It starts with small acts of kindness. Like, can you start there? If you're thinking, oh, wow, this seems really big and I don't have time and I don't know how I'm going to demonstrate that I've grown. Can you start with small acts of kindness, random acts of kindness, like helping a neighbor with their groceries or a person in a parking lot, paying for a stranger's coffee, for example, giving someone a genuine compliment or a kind word are small ways to make someone else's day brighter. Even just acknowledging the person. Things have changed so much. And just the other day, when I'm at the grocery store, I make an effort, if I've been on the phone, to like get off the phone or put it down. I make an effort to ask the cashier, how's your day going? How are you? Often not everyone's asking them that. But this time was so interesting because I'm sure it's the store I was at. I'm not going to call them out, but it's like a regular grocery store. Both the person helping to bag and the cashier, the checker person, had AirPods, headphones that you couldn't really see, and they were both on the phone having conversations while I was at, which is fine. It's whatever. I don't need them to pay attention to me, but I just think it's so fascinating how in all these little ways we're keeping ourselves isolated from this connection, from this kindness, from these very small exchanges that we can have that will make us feel more a part of the community or engaged with other human beings. So I'll get off my little soapbox about that, but can you volunteer locally? Can you get involved with a local shelter or a food bank or a community organization? Every community has tons of organizations that you probably don't even know about, and just doing some research or asking other people can really help you find some perhaps little local charity organizations. I don't love saying that word. I know that's not how most of them identify now, or community events or community places that you can, even just a couple hours a month, or if you're ambitious, a couple hours a week, or maybe you have a skill that could help them. Maybe you're great at fundraising or making phone calls or whatever it is. Can you volunteer a little bit of your, it doesn't have to be your abundance even. Maybe you're thinking, well, I'm strapped, I can't really donate, but can you volunteer? Could you give a little time or a little bit of whatever it is that you do? And the last part of this humanitarianism is, well, there's a couple more, I guess. So healers heal is what I want to say. A lot of you that listen are healers yourself or spirit workers in some way. Could you, for example, even if it's online, could you create, I have the monthly free community healing where anyone is welcome to come. You can get on my website, joyfulmedium.com, in the events section, and you can see the next, I have one every month of the year. Pretty much without fail, unless I'm really sick or something's happening. But can you hold little healing circles or meditation circles where perhaps you're sending healing to people in need? It doesn't even mean it's for the people in the group, but perhaps you're all, each month focusing on healing a different group, people that are in the hospital, people that are on hospice or have a loved one on hospice, people that are in the military and away from their families and serving our country, whatever you like. If you're a healer or have healing gifts at all, you could even be helping in that way. And the last one I listed was, can you host or participate in like a community cleanup, for example, organizing or joining existing cleanups at a local park or neighborhood? It can help build community spirit and protect the environment. And of course, we all, I think, are to varying degrees working on this, supporting fair trade and ethical products, supporting small and minority owned businesses, supporting local businesses and nonprofits. Because the truth is, as much as we all hate to say it, it's the mighty money, right? The mighty dollar, or whatever your currency is where you live, that really is how we show our feelings and our support to leadership. So where are you letting your dollars go? And of course, there are some big name companies that a lot of us shop from that it's just so convenient. But if there are other purchases that you're looking for, can you seek out smaller, fair trade, ethical products, small businesses, minority owned businesses, local businesses, not nonprofits or people that do something? As you know, there are those companies, I'm not going to name anyone specifically, but where you buy one item from them and they donate one item to someone in need, for example. So can you start looking at ways that you can open your heart in a humanitarian way with something that maybe is just for others and doesn't have a measurable benefit back for you? The seventh theme that I want to talk about that is going to show up in 2025. I feel like for me, sometimes I'm already getting whiffs of these themes in December of the year before. So the seventh theme for 2025 is expansion and or leveling up. This is part of the completion energy of this year. This sets us up for new beginnings in 2026, in that 1 year, like we were talking about, reaching a pinnacle so that we can begin the next level of understanding, of growth, of whatever it is we're pursuing. And again, this is not going to be focused in just one area. So if you're thinking like, oh yeah, I want to level up and grow in my business or workplace, for example, well, that's going to require you to grow and level up in the other areas. One area can hold us back from growth in another area. So if you're not working on the emotional side and the processing and all of that, there's a chance that it can hinder your growth in other areas. So just want to throw that out there. If you've been working on a skill or an art or a trade, for example, now's the time to really buckle down and finalize the foundation that will support you for the next cycle. So if you're someone that's like been wanting to practice your spiritual gifts, buckle down and get into your meditation practice, get into your fundamentals, whatever it is for you. If you're someone that has been focused on health and fitness, now is the time to really understand your schedule and how you're getting in those, whether it's activities or nutrition or whatever it is that you need, and how are you really just streamlining that into your life so that it is foundationally there and part of what you do and part of who you are, so that you can kind of get to the next place in the 1 year. So, in business, this can look like fine-tuning existing systems or schedules or offerings. If you've been trying to master a certain technique or modality, for example, the energy of this year supports things kind of like clicking into place. So if you haven't felt like things have totally clicked into place this year, if you keep at it, chop wood, carry water is the kind of the phrase, things can kind of have an opportunity to click into place in the 9 year, and hard work really pays off this year. And this can also include releasing other focuses that are no longer in alignment with your overall vision. So perhaps there's some distracting things that you can be aware of as part of, again, releasing. These themes all really work together and are twisted together. And a part of this energy of expansion or leveling up is also including coming to clarity and being honest with ourselves on what's really important and prioritizing accordingly. Maybe time is a construct created by our earth and human beings, but the truth is, in this world, we have limited amounts of time, and choosing one thing, whatever it is, automatically means we're not choosing something else. If you're going to watch an hour of TV, it means you're not going to do an hour of something else, right? Just common sense. So really just understanding within yourself what's important, what's serving the overall of who I am and who I want to be, and prioritizing accordingly. And again, this can apply to any area of your life: work, passions, relationships, goals, finances, spirituality, health, fine-tuning habits, routines, etc. Another part of this energy of expansion you're going to probably be really excited about is this idea of spiritual awakening. I've heard this said over the years, and you guys know I believe it's not a light switch, it's a relationship. It's a growing, just like we would strengthen a muscle. If you've ever had an injury, or if you've ever worked out or exercised in any way, you know that perhaps today you can only walk up 5 stairs without being out of breath. But if you keep at it, maybe in 6 months, you'll be able to walk up 25 stairs and feel okay. So intuition, spiritual awakening is the same thing. This can look like you being more drawn to like the woo-woo topics. Maybe there's an area of personal development that just hasn't really interested in you in the past, that hasn't really held your attention in the past, that is now just calling you. I just recently started diving a little bit more into my Enneagram type, for example. I've dabbled in it before and then kind of got pushed off to the side, and it's been looping around for me. So anything that has to do with your personal growth, personal development, or spiritual awakening. Maybe you're getting interested in developing your intuition. Maybe you're getting interested in playing with oracle cards, or understanding, how do I meet with my guides or my angels, or how do I, do I have spiritual gifts, and what are they? Really just looking for those breadcrumbs of, what do you feel curious about? What do you feel interested about? So really just knowing that your intuition can also really expand, or your relationship with your intuition, your understanding what it is and what it's not, for example, can really expand, level up, deepen, whatever word you like in there. And just knowing that what are you more curious about really is the right direction? Is it your intuition? What are you noticing? Are you starting to let yourself be more intuitive as you move throughout your regular life? It's not a segmented thing where it's like, oh, I only practice intuition in my meditation. No, we practice it throughout our whole day, all the time, just kind of in the background a lot of the times. So, even noticing what your intuition is bringing to your awareness to review, like, oh yeah, I know that I need to do this before XYZ. I know, yeah. So intuition, if you have been interested in your intuition or any of the spiritual gifts, or wondering what gifts are for you, or maybe what to do next, I am going to have a podcast episode about that coming up, and some really exciting news to announce. So a little Easter egg. Remember that I'm saying that because I have some exciting opportunities for you if you are one of these people as part of this number 7 theme, expansion and leveling up. If you are feeling like, oh yeah, I think that might be for me about my intuition or spiritual gifts or spirituality. So get excited about that. The 8th theme we can expect to see showing up is celebration. The past 8 years, we've all really come a long way. That's just the truth. In certain areas, yeah, of course, when we look collectively, some things look like 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But as individuals and collectives overall, we've come a long way in the last 8 years. And it's time to look back and to look forward, to honor where you've been and celebrate who you used to be and what you've grown into, right? Doesn't mean we have to be judging our past selves. We can celebrate perhaps the hard times that we went through to help us get to who we are today, or even being willing to talk about or look at who we are today, right? So, the way to think of it with the 9 year is like it's graduation time. Where can you celebrate the growth that you've had, or how far you've come, or even just the personal development or the work you've done on yourself as a human being, right? Can you commit to scheduling in or making time to experience celebration and joy this year? I will say it's not going to be necessarily a year that celebration and joy is going to be maybe the most obvious, or you might not like the way other people are celebrating or experiencing joy. You have the ability and the directive really to be creating your own celebration, your own joy, the things that you can celebrate no matter how hard things are looking in life. I'm not going to really go into this, but if you look across history, people have always found ways to celebrate, to find joy, to find song, right? So how can you find it? How can you create it? Can you commit to scheduling or making time to experience celebration or joy? Can you celebrate life even amidst its challenges and chaos? How can you also celebrate small wins for yourself and others? Really just honoring yourself and honoring others, and the reality of situations that, like, yeah, some of this has been hard, but also here's how we've grown. Here's how this tension has made us maybe even understand more of what we want. Or perhaps you've gone through some tough things that will continue to kind of bubble this year, so that you're realizing for that 1 year, you know what? I've been really in this pressure cooker, and now I know the direction I need to go, or I know what I need to work on next. So there's always something to celebrate if you're willing to find it, if you're willing to look for it, even if it's a very seemingly small win to someone else. It doesn't mean it has to be small to you, or it doesn't mean that you can't celebrate in ways great and small and find the joy even amidst challenge and chaos. The number 9 theme that we can expect to be showing up this year in our world, I actually really like this one: magic and surprises. This is a grand finale in this cycle, and almost anything is possible. So some of these surprises we might judge as challenging themselves or negative, but unexpected. Sometimes surprises are shocking, right? Sometimes there could be a surprise that just something we weren't expecting and that we don't like. But there's also potential for what I'm calling magic, which you could insert another word if you just feel really uncomfortable with that word. But just knowing that there are things going on behind the scenes, that there are workings and energy and paths. There's so much more than we can see or understand with our eyes. And remember that sometimes our physical world is taking time to catch up with the unseen world. One of the things that's been really interesting for me to just kind of keep a pulse on over the years, as I've become more comfortable now that I'm just like a full-time working medium and a healer and intuition coach, I really have noticed over the years how much more these types of words and topics are making their way into mainstream or poking up their little heads in mainstream podcasts. And there's a kind of a marketing guru named Gary Vee. He just, on one of his YouTube shows the other day, I heard him talking to someone about how he believes that the brain, the intuition, the gut is the first brain, that gut feeling, that intuition is the first brain. And he was saying how he's really excited that science is working its way towards proving that, right? That he believes that within the next few years that will be proven and accepted scientific knowledge that our gut is the first brain. And if you followed any like really high level wellness experts, nutrition experts, and I don't mean the like, just know your sources, I'll say it that way. They will talk about that our body, our gut tells our brain, not the other way around a lot of the time, especially when we're thinking about those flight, fright, freeze. You guys know what I mean. I'm still in this brain fog from having this little bit of a flu that I've had, but y'all know what I mean. So really, there's so much more in the unseen than what we experience with our physical five senses. So there is still potential for magic. There's still potential for surprises, challenging surprises and positive surprises. Really just knowing that everything that we see is not all that meets the eye, knowing that there still can be little magical things collectively for all of us, but also in our own little private lives, in our own little private worlds. And are you available to, I guess these two themes really tie together, celebrate or have joy about the little magic, the little surprises? Yeah, of course, the big things we can celebrate collectively, but sometimes there are smaller wins or smaller surprises or smaller magic, seemingly the way things serendipitously line up, or the way something is eclipsed out, for example, that wasn't good, that we were nervous about. There are lots of surprises and magic that can be part of this 9-year. Just think, the 9-year cycle, this is graduation year, this is the grand finale, this is kind of our senior year of this 9 cycle, right? So just know in the final season, right, there's always unexpected everything. So there will be lots of little surprises, lots of little, oh, I didn't see that coming. But if you look back at these themes, you will see that 9 times out of 10, it's going to tie back into one of these themes. Like I said, we can't necessarily know how each of these themes are going to roll out, or like a laundry list or a grocery list of all the exact things and ways that these themes are going to show up as. But if we're available and aware of the themes, we can be more prepared to like ebb and flow with this energy. We can know how to be using this energy to set ourselves up as the year continues, to be doing that evaluation, to be cleaning out our proverbial closets. And I do think we're going to be seeing this on a grander scale. So I know in the 8-year, there's a lot about truth coming to light. I don't know that it's going to be the same laser focus on truth coming to light as it was in the 8-year, but I do know that some skeletons in the proverbial closets of a more global stage are probably going to be oozing out. I'll just say it that way. So get excited for the 9-year. And again, every year is different. Every year holds different themes for us, different challenges, different hills for us to climb, right? But different connections for us to make, deeper love to have, deeper experiences for us to have in life. And how are you intentionally cultivating the garden of your life? Well, if you know that the 1 year that's coming up after this is the time for big growth, new things to launch, success, happiness, it's all of the like next chapter possibilities. what do you want to do this year to be setting yourself up? What foundational things can you click into place? And perhaps we have maybe more illusion of control in our own lives. We can work on ourselves, right? We can't necessarily change anyone else, but would you want to be creating more of a humanitarian vibe in the communities that you're in? Would you want to be creating more compassion, more grace where you can? This is something that I know I'm going to be working on. Those that know me personally know I've even joked about like this really for me is going to be a year about like patience and grace and accepting imperfections. If you're someone who is like me, a bit of a reforming, ever recovering perfectionist or people pleaser, or someone that tends to be very hard on yourself in the details and expectations of yourself, this is a year to get really a little bit more clear about that and to really look at, is that the way we're doing it because that's what's always been done, or that's what's worked for us in the past, or that's what someone in our formative years told us or rewarded us for doing? Or are we doing it this way because it's the healthiest and best for us right now and going forward? So it's those kind of questions. I'm going to just tell you the names of the themes again. So Theme 1, review and revisit. Theme 2, unfinished business. Theme 3, cleaning house. Get them skeletons in those closets and tidy them up. Theme 4, surrender and transformation. Theme 5, forgiveness, which also is accepting and honoring imperfection in ourselves and others. Theme 6, humanitarianism, showing up for others and where can we give of ourselves and in an open-hearted and vulnerable way. Theme 7, expansion or leveling up. And part of this being spiritual growth, intuitive growth, spiritual gifts really expanding, kind of spiritual awakening is the umbrella that it's under. And 8 is celebration and joy. So finding that for yourself and marinating it in as part of this foundation, right? And theme 9, magic and surprises. And just know that as part of setting this firm foundation that we're going to want to exit this year and enter the next year with, it's a lot of forward thinking, a lot of looking at things now so that we are better set up for this next phase. And part of that is happiness, joy, celebration, relaxation, ease. We have to be the ones to somehow build that into our own lives if we want it to happen. No one is going to knock on your door and impose a mandatory joy hour every Saturday at 7. That is not going to happen. That has to be you. That has to be your creation. That has to be your decision. And I don't want it to be a fake, light and fluffy happiness, although, yeah, sometimes cover everything with marshmallow fluff. That's great. But I want it to be a deep, I've looked at my life. I've looked at myself. I've cleaned out my closets. I've released what's not serving me. I understand more deeply who I am, what I want, and why. And here we go, right? So I hope that these 9 themes have given you something to think about. I certainly am going to be thinking about them. I don't know if you guys know this, but I actually like to create a little list for myself. I've done this for years, even before I had the podcast or shared this with anyone. I just kind of make a little bullet pointed list of the themes because I'm a little artsy and a little extra. I like to like color mine in and make it pretty. I'm looking to the side because I sometimes have one over there on my desk. And I just like to keep an awareness of the themes throughout the year, especially so, this is one of the ways I use it personally, when things feel a little tight or a little challenging, I will look like this last year when so many things were popping off and we were learning about people's deep, dark secrets and terrible things that they'd done, for example. One of the themes was truth coming to light in big and shocking ways. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's happening. So I like to keep a little list for myself just so I know as things come up collectively in our world. And for me personally, I look back at the themes and I say like, oh, okay. Or I'll know like, oh, okay, I'm working on this year, or we're collectively working on this year. This year, definitely I'm going to need that reminder to help me have grace and patience and compassion with others. I've noticed, I don't know, tell me if this is true for you. I've noticed that as I'm out and about in the world, people are just a little more angry. I'm feeling more aggression out there. I'm feeling less
friendliness, less connection, less people even wanting to make eye contact, people being very assertive in aggressive and angry ways. I'm sure it's not everybody, so it's going to be part of my job to look for the opposite of that, and to see where can I see people who do want to connect, who do want to make eye contact, who aren't on their phone. Where can I just give someone some grace and say, like, yeah, okay, go ahead of me, I got nothing about it, it's fine. So there's lots of little work for us to be having, and I'm super excited about the deepening and expansion of intuition. Again, I've got some things planned for you in the new year as opportunities if you choose them, but definitely be at least coming to the free community healings so that you can kind of get refreshed, recharged, rejuvenated, and receiving a little bit for yourself. Because if we're doing all this work on ourselves and this looking at ourselves and really just dragging everything out of our closets, so to speak, literally and figuratively, allow yourself to have some support with that too, right? It's not just all work and no play. It's part of joy and celebration and the deliciousness that's available to us in life. So I hope that these 9 themes for 2025 have been exciting for you. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're already starting to see or feel some of these themes in your own life. Perhaps you've already been getting a little bit of the nudge or the bug to, like for me, I keep looking around. I record these at home often. I keep looking around thinking like, oh, what's actually all in that drawer? I got to get in that drawer and just tidy up. And I already have started going through my clothes and things for the season and thinking like, okay, I forgot I even had this. So let me see if I'm going to wear it. But that counts for our relationships, for our emotions, for the things we're spending time on, for the things we're stewing on and thinking about. Are we anchored into somewhere else on our timeline and we need to let that anchor go and anchor into the present and looking at what we want for the future? So I am just so grateful for you this year and into the future. And I've got some really exciting things planned, some things for us to come together on, and some ways if you are someone who's feeling like, yeah, I actually have been feeling a little bit more curious about my intuition or my spiritual gifts, I've got something coming up for you. So stick around. Big hugs, lots of love, wishing you joy and celebration and happiness sprinkled all throughout your year in the best ways. And I will continue to be here with you through 2025. Big hugs, lots of love. Bye for now. From inside Spirit Speakeasy.